It was supposed to be just another ordinary day. The alarm clock rings, the gym clothes are already laid out, breakfast follows the exact same plan as the last few weeks, and before leaving home, a final stop at the scale. Eyes slowly descend to the display. The number remains exactly the same as yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and last week. The first reaction is usually always the same. I must be doing something wrong. So the person cuts more calories, walks a few more kilometers, eliminates that food they loved so much, resists temptations, faces hunger, and continues to believe that if they persist a little longer, the weight will finally come off again. But the days go by, then the weeks, and nothing happens. It is at this point that many people give up. Not because they lack determination, but because they begin to believe that there is some flaw in themselves. After all, for decades, we have heard the same explanation. Losing weight is simply a matter of eating less and expending more energy. If the scale has stopped moving, the blame can only lie with a lack of discipline. This idea seems logical, simple. It's convincing enough. The problem is that science began to find facts that simply didn't fit this explanation. Researchers observed people who continued to rigorously follow the diet, maintained an intense exercise routine, and yet saw their weight loss slow down drastically. Even more intriguing, some regained the lost weight even without returning to their old habits. How could this be possible? Could the body be reacting in some invisible way? For a long time, this hypothesis seemed improbable. After all, it was believed that metabolism worked almost like a calculator. Fewer calories in, more calories out, less fat stored. A predictable and practically mechanical process. But the human body is far from being a simple machine. Behind each meal lies a complex network of hormones, signals sent to the brain, adjustments in energy consumption, and survival mechanisms developed over millions of years of evolution. These systems were not created to facilitate weight loss. They were shaped to ensure that our ancestors survived in times of scarcity, when finding food was a matter of life or death. And perhaps that's precisely where one of the greatest difficulties faced by those trying to lose weight today lies. The body may interpret significant fat loss not as an achievement, but as a threat. Instead of cooperating, it begins to conserve energy. Hunger increases, satiety decreases, caloric expenditure drops silently, and all this can happen without the person realizing it. For years, many experts suspected this phenomenon existed, but conclusive evidence was lacking. It was necessary to monitor people in extreme conditions to discover if the metabolism really changed, or if it was all just an impression caused by the difficulties of maintaining a diet. It was then that an extraordinary experiment caught the attention of the scientific community. The results surprised even the researchers themselves. They showed that, after significant weight loss, the body could reduce its energy expenditure far beyond what was expected, while hormones linked to hunger remained altered for months, and, in some cases, even for years. For the first time, there was robust evidence that the body was not a passive spectator of weight loss. It actively participated in this battle. This discovery profoundly changed how scientists view metabolism and helped explain why so many people get stuck in a frustrating cycle of losing weight, plateauing, and regaining it all. But this story goes far beyond a single experiment. It involves evolution, biology, hormones, human behavior, and a question that continues to intrigue millions of people around the world. When we try to lose weight, are we only fighting against our habits, or also against survival mechanisms that the body itself has developed to prevent this change? The answer begins long before the laboratories. It originates in the history of diets, in how we have learned to view excess weight, and in the ideas that have shaped our understanding of metabolism for over a century. Long before calorie-counting apps, smartwatches, or weight loss programs existed, excess weight already sparked curiosity among doctors and scientists. But the available answers were extremely limited. The human body was still a great mystery, and nutrition, as a science, was only taking its first steps. In the 19th century, an idea began to gain traction. Body weight was the result of a relatively simple balance between what one eats and what one expends. This logic seemed almost irrefutable. If a person consumed more energy than they used, they stored the excess as fat. If they consumed less, they used their reserves and lost weight. From a physics standpoint, this reasoning remains correct. Energy doesn't disappear. It needs to be transformed or stored. The problem arose when this explanation began to be interpreted as if the body were merely a calculator, incapable of reacting to the changes imposed by a diet. That's when one of the biggest misconceptions in the history of weight loss was born. Little by little, the responsibility for the success or failure of a diet ceased to be seen as a complex interaction between biology and behavior. Instead, it began to be treated almost exclusively as a matter of character. If you lost weight, you had discipline. If you regained the weight, you lacked willpower. This view spanned decades and influenced not only common sense, but also part of the medical practice of the time. Magazines, television programs, and health campaigns repeated the same message. Simply eat less. It was a comfortable explanation because of its simplicity. But reality insisted on contradicting it. Thousands of people managed to lose weight for a few months. Then, almost without realizing it, the weight loss slowed down. Next came stagnation, and, not infrequently, the gradual recovery of the lost pounds began. This phenomenon even received a well-known name, the yo-yo effect. For a long time, it was believed that it happened because people relaxed after achieving a certain result. Undoubtedly, this can occur in many cases. Maintaining new habits for years requires effort, planning, and adaptation. But this explanation did not resolve a detail that intrigued researchers. Even highly disciplined individuals faced exactly the same problem. Military personnel, athletes, participants in rigorous weight loss programs. Patients monitored daily by medical teams. Now, why did this happen? If everyone was following the guidelines correctly, why did the body seem to make weight loss increasingly difficult? While this question remained unanswered, another silent transformation was taking place in society. From the second half of the 20th century, processed foods began to occupy an increasingly large space in the diet. Ultra-processed products became cheaper, more convenient, and highly palatable. At the same time, physical labor decreased, means of transportation evolved, and many daily activities began to require much less movement. The environment had changed completely. Our brains, however, remained practically the same as thousands of years ago. For almost all of human evolution, obtaining food was difficult. Long periods of scarcity were part of the routine of our ancestors. In this scenario, any organism capable of conserving energy and preserving fat reserves had a greater chance of survival. Fat was not a problem, it was life insurance. Each kilogram stored represented days or even weeks of survival if food disappeared. Therefore, over countless generations, natural selection favored extremely efficient mechanisms to prevent excessive energy loss. This detail is fundamental. Evolution never needed to prepare humans to lose weight voluntarily. She needed to prepare him to survive when food was scarce. This difference completely changes the perspective. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, a hunter-gatherer goes through a period of drought. There is little food available, and he begins to lose weight rapidly. In the second, a modern person decides to start a diet for aesthetic or health reasons. To us, these situations seem totally different. But can the brain distinguish between them? From a biological point of view, both present a similar signal. Energy reserves are dwindling, and whenever this happens, ancient protective mechanisms can be activated. At that time, no one yet knew about hormones like leptin, ghrelin, peptide YY, or GLP-1. There was also no equipment capable of accurately measuring resting energy expenditure, nor modern techniques for assessing body composition. Scientists observed the effects, but they couldn't see their causes. It was only in recent decades that more advanced technologies have allowed us to investigate human metabolism in impressive detail. Researchers began measuring how many calories a person actually burned throughout the day, how that expenditure changed after significant weight loss, and what happened in the brain when the body perceived a reduction in fat reserves. The findings began to challenge long-held certainties. Some study participants showed a much greater drop in energy expenditure than would be expected from a reduction in body size alone. Others reported persistent hunger that seemed impossible to control, even after consuming sufficient meals. Most curiously, these changes didn't disappear quickly. In many cases, they persisted for months, sometimes for years. The idea that metabolism was completely stable began to crumble. But evidence capable of convincing even the most skeptical scientists was still lacking. It was necessary to observe people undergoing extreme weight loss, monitor them closely, and measure every detail of how their bodies functioned before, during, and after this process. Few opportunities would allow for such a comprehensive investigation, until a rather improbable scenario caught the researchers' attention. Millions of people watched a weight loss competition on television, cheering for the participants as if they were watching a sporting championship. The audience saw only the physical transformation. Scientists saw something much bigger. There was a unique opportunity to answer a question that had remained unsolved for decades. What really happens to human metabolism after someone loses a significant amount of weight? The answer would profoundly change how we understand weight loss and reveal that the biggest challenge might not be losing weight, but convincing the body itself to accept this change. For years, scientists have tried to answer the same question using small laboratory studies. They reduced calories, followed volunteers for a few weeks, and observed how the body reacted. The results were interesting, but there was a significant limitation. Weight loss was usually modest. A situation was lacking where people lost tens of pounds in a relatively short period, under rigorous monitoring. It was precisely this type of transformation that could reveal how far the body was willing to go to replenish its energy reserves. Interestingly, this opportunity arose outside the laboratories. It appeared on television. In the program The Biggest Loser, obese participants were subjected to an intense combination of calorie restriction and many hours of physical activity every day. In a few months, some lost more than 50, 60, or even 80 pounds. To the public, it seemed like definitive proof that anyone could lose weight if they had enough discipline. But a group of researchers saw something different. They wanted to know what would happen after the cameras were turned off. Years later, scientists led by researcher Kevin Hall of the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases in the United States located participants in the program and decided to reassess their bodies. They weren't just interested in the weight they had regained or maintained. They wanted to measure something much deeper. How much energy were those bodies actually expending? To answer this question, they used equipment capable of calculating resting energy expenditure. That is, the amount of calories the body consumes just to maintain essential functions such as breathing, making the heart beat, maintaining body temperature, and allowing the brain to function. This expenditure represents the majority of calories used throughout the day. It's like the body's operating cost. The initial expectation was relatively simple. If a person loses a lot of weight, their body naturally becomes smaller. A smaller body needs less energy to function. Therefore, it was expected that caloric expenditure would decrease. Up to that point, nothing surprising. But when the numbers started to appear, the researchers realized that something much more complex was happening. The participants weren't just burning fewer calories because they had lost weight. They were burning far fewer calories than would be expected for someone at that new weight. It was as if the body had deliberately reduced its energy consumption. In some cases, this difference reached hundreds of calories per day. It may seem like a small amount, but imagine silently saving 400 or 500 calories every day. Over weeks and months, this saving represents a huge advantage in regaining the lost weight. It was as if the body had switched to an energy-saving mode, and that wasn't the only surprising discovery. The researchers also observed important changes in hormones responsible for controlling hunger and satiety. One of the protagonists in this story is leptin. Produced mainly by fat cells, leptin acts as a messenger. When there is enough stored energy, it informs the brain that the reserves are adequate. It's a kind of indicator of the body's fuel stock. When the amount of body fat decreases significantly, leptin levels also drop. The brain interprets this drop as a warning signal. It doesn't matter to the brain whether the person started a diet for health or aesthetic reasons. The message received is different. Reserves are dwindling. And faced with this warning, a series of mechanisms are triggered. Hunger increases. The feeling of reward from eating becomes more intense. The desire for energy-rich foods grows. At the same time, the body tries to burn fewer calories. It's an extremely efficient strategy for surviving in environments where food is scarce. Another hormone also comes into play: ghrelin, often called the hunger hormone. It is produced mainly in the stomach and tends to increase before meals, stimulating appetite. After significant weight loss, several studies have shown that its levels can remain higher than before the diet. In practice, this means that many people not only need to eat less to maintain their new weight, but they also feel hungrier while doing so. This combination is powerful. Imagine trying to save money while at the same time your salary decreases and all the shop windows seem more attractive than ever. This is exactly the feeling that many individuals describe after losing weight. It's not just about cravings. There's a biological response happening. But perhaps the most impressive finding of the study was another. The researchers followed these participants for about 6 years after the program. It would be reasonable to imagine that, after so much time, their metabolism would have returned to normal. But this did not happen. In many cases, metabolic adaptation persisted. Even those who had regained some of the weight continued to show lower energy expenditure than expected. These results attracted enormous attention from the scientific community because they showed that the body could maintain defense mechanisms for a much longer period than previously thought. It's important to make a caveat. This study involved an extreme situation. The participants underwent a very intense weight loss process, with significant caloric restriction and high volumes of physical exercise. Therefore, its results cannot be applied identically to all people who diet. Even so, they reinforced a concept that other studies, conducted in different contexts, had also been demonstrating. Metabolism is adaptable. When there is a significant reduction in fat reserves, the body can respond by decreasing energy expenditure and increasing hunger signals. This adaptation varies considerably between individuals. Some people show more subtle changes, while others seem to respond much more intensely. Factors such as genetics, body composition, weight history, sleep quality, level of physical activity, and hormonal characteristics help explain some of these differences. In other words, two people can follow similar dietary plans and still experience very different difficulties in maintaining the weight loss. This understanding represented a significant shift in how doctors and researchers viewed weight loss. The question ceased to be simply, why did this person regain the weight? And became, what biological mechanisms are hindering the maintenance of this loss? This change in perspective does not eliminate the importance of healthy habits. Balanced diet, physical activity, adequate sleep, and professional monitoring remain fundamental pillars for health and weight control. But it also helps to reduce a stigma that has accompanied millions of people for decades. The idea that regaining weight after losing it is always the result of a lack of effort. Science has shown that the story is much more complex, and, in fact, the experiment revealed only one piece of the puzzle. Because an even more intriguing question remained. Why did evolution create an organism that fights so intensely to prevent weight loss, even in a world where food has never been so abundant? The answer requires going back thousands of years, when survival depended on every gram of stored fat, and when the brain learned a lesson it never forgot. It's easy to look at today's world and imagine that excess weight has always been a problem for humanity. Overflowing supermarkets, meals available at any time, and food delivered to your door make it seem like living surrounded by abundance is natural. But for most of human history, the reality was exactly the opposite. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors never knew when they would find their next meal. There were days of successful hunting and days when almost nothing was found. The seasons changed, fruits disappeared, animals migrated, and long periods of scarcity were part of the routine. In this unpredictable environment, wasting energy was a luxury no one could afford. Survival depended on an extremely efficient organism. Every calorie saved increased the chances of staying alive. Every fat reserve represented extra days of survival. It was in this scenario that the human brain evolved, and this explains a fundamental difference between how we think and how our bodies react. You may decide to start a diet because you want to improve your health, reduce the risk of disease, or simply feel better about yourself in the mirror. Your conscious brain perfectly understands this goal. But there's another part of the nervous system that doesn't make that kind of interpretation. It doesn't know about summer goals. It doesn't understand concepts of aesthetics. It doesn't know what a gym is. It only monitors biological signals. When it perceives that energy reserves are dwindling, it interprets this event in the way it learned throughout evolution. Maybe the food is running out. It's an automatic conclusion, not rational, and that's precisely where a chain reaction begins. Imagine a large building during an energy crisis. Management decides to reduce consumption to preserve essential functions. First, they dim the lights in the corridors. Then, they reduce the air conditioning. Elevators start operating more economically. Everything continues to function, but consuming less. Metabolism does something similar. Without you realizing it, several small adjustments begin to happen simultaneously. You may move a little less throughout the day. You gesture less during a conversation. You change position less frequently. You spend more time sitting. You climb stairs at a slightly slower pace. None of these changes are noticeable in isolation, but added together, they represent a significant saving of energy. Scientists call part of this phenomenon a reduction in spontaneous physical activity. It's different from planned exercise. You still go to the gym, you still walk, but the rest of the day becomes, almost imperceptibly, more energy efficient. Furthermore, the body itself begins to perform some functions with greater energy efficiency. Muscles can expend less energy to perform certain movements. The body tries to make better use of each available calorie. It's like managing a budget in difficult times. There is another protagonist in this story, the brain. Although it represents only a small fraction of body weight, it consumes about 1/5 of the energy used at rest. Therefore, the body does everything to ensure its functioning. When energy availability decreases, other functions can be adjusted before the brain is affected. This system was extraordinarily useful during evolution. The problem is that it continues to function in an environment completely different from the one in which it was created. Today, scarcity is rarely the biggest challenge. The real challenge is precisely the opposite. We live surrounded by highly palatable foods, rich in sugar, fat, and carefully crafted combinations designed to stimulate our reward systems. When someone starts a diet, these characteristics become even more appealing, not because the person has lost self-control, but because the brain increases its sensitivity to food-related signals. Neuroimaging studies show that, After significant weight loss, brain areas linked to pleasure and motivation may respond more intensely to images or smells of food. At the same time, satiety signals tend to exert less influence. It's as if the brain increases the volume of stimuli that encourage eating. Think about how many times someone comments, "After dieting, it seems like I think about food all the time." For a long time, it was believed that this was just a psychological feeling. Today we know that, in many cases, there is also a biological basis. The body is trying to restore its previous weight. Not because that weight is necessarily the healthiest, but because it represents the state to which the body has adapted over time. Some researchers use the idea of a defended weight to explain this phenomenon. This doesn't mean there's a fixed immutable number stored in the body, but rather that the brain tends to resist significant changes in energy reserves, using various hormonal and metabolic mechanisms to reduce this variation. This helps explain why maintaining lost weight is usually more difficult than losing it initially. The battle doesn't end when fat decreases. In many ways, it simply changes face. But there's an important detail that completely transforms this story. If the body has such powerful mechanisms to regain weight, why do some people manage to maintain weight loss for many years? The answer lies precisely in the body's ability to continue adapting. Although metabolic adaptation exists, it doesn't make weight loss impossible. The body is dynamic. Consistent habits, strength training to preserve muscle mass, a protein-rich diet, regular physical activity, quality sleep, and sustainable strategies help reduce some of this biological resistance over time. In other words, evolution has prepared the body to survive scarcity. But science is learning how to work with these mechanisms instead of simply fighting against them. And this leads us to the most practical stage of all this research. If we understand why metabolism slows down and why hunger increases, an inevitable question arises. Is it possible to lose weight and maintain the results without waging a permanent war against one's own body? This is exactly the question we will begin to answer in the next topic. After understanding that the body has defense mechanisms against weight loss, a question naturally arises. If metabolism really adapts, why do some diets work very well in the first few weeks, and then simply seem to stop working? The answer begins with a detail that almost never appears in weight loss advertisements. The body changes all the time. Imagine you are carrying a 20-kilogram backpack on your back all day. You climb stairs. You walk to work. You get up from your chair dozens of times. Now imagine removing that backpack. Each movement requires less effort. You continue to do exactly the same activities, but you expend less energy to perform them. Something similar happens when a person loses weight. A lighter body naturally needs fewer calories to walk, run, climb stairs, and even stand. This is an expected and completely normal adaptation. But there is a second, less evident change. In addition to carrying less weight, the body can also become more efficient. That is, it begins to perform some tasks consuming less energy than before. It's as if the body learns to conserve fuel. Therefore, the calorie deficit that worked perfectly at the beginning of the diet may cease to exist a few months later. Let's imagine a simple example. A person started the process consuming 2,000 calories a day while expending approximately 2,500. There was a deficit of 500 calories. Over the months, they lost weight. Now their body is smaller. In addition, there was a metabolic adaptation. Their daily expenditure dropped to just over 2,000 calories. They continue to ingest the same 2,000 calories from the initial diet. In practice, that deficit has practically disappeared. The feeling is that the metabolism has stalled. In reality, the body has simply started to function in a new equilibrium. That's precisely why many experts prefer to abandon the term plateau, as if it were a bodily defect. Most of the time, it's a predictable consequence of the changes that occurred during weight loss. But there's another, even more important factor. not all weight loss represents fat loss. When calorie restriction is very aggressive, the body can also use some muscle mass as an energy source. This makes a huge difference. Muscles are metabolically active tissues. The greater the amount of muscle mass preserved, the greater the daily energy expenditure tends to be. When this mass decreases excessively, metabolism can drop even further. That's why modern weight loss programs place so much importance on strength training. For a long time, it was believed that weight training was only for those who wanted to gain muscle mass. Today we know that it plays a much broader role. By stimulating the preservation and, in some cases, the gain of muscle mass, strength training helps maintain energy expenditure, improves functional capacity, and facilitates the maintenance of lost weight. Another frequently ignored point is the quality of the diet. It's not just about the quantity of calories. Proteins, for example, have a significant effect on satiety and require more energy to digest and metabolize compared to carbohydrates and fats. Furthermore, adequate protein intake helps preserve muscle mass during weight loss. Fiber also plays a relevant role. It slows down stomach emptying, contributes to a greater feeling of fullness, and feeds part of the gut microbiota, a collection of trillions of microorganisms that participate in various processes related to metabolism. Although much research on the microbiota is still ongoing, we already know that it influences digestion, the production of some important substances, and even communication between the gut and the brain. But diet is not the only element in this equation. Sleep is often one of the first habits sacrificed in modern life, and this comes at a price. Several studies show that poor sleep can increase feelings of hunger, reduce satiety, and encourage higher calorie food choices the next day. In addition, sleep deprivation is associated with hormonal changes that make it difficult to control appetite. Chronic stress also deserves attention. When we face stressful situations for extended periods, our eating behavior can change significantly. Some people eat less. Others start seeking highly palatable foods as a form of emotional comfort. It's not just a matter of self-control. The brain uses food as part of its reward and emotional regulation systems. This explains why many people can stick to a diet for weeks at a time, but face enormous difficulties when problems arise at work, family conflicts, or prolonged periods of anxiety. The environment around us also exerts a powerful influence. We live surrounded by stimuli to eat, advertisements, smells, promotions, ever larger portions, food available 24 hours a day. Our bodies evolved to take advantage of feeding opportunities when they arose. Today, these opportunities simply never end. That's why maintaining weight loss doesn't depend exclusively on motivation. It depends on building an environment that facilitates good choices, making nutritious foods more accessible, planning meals, sleeping adequately, practicing regular physical activity, avoiding extremely restrictive strategies that can hardly be maintained for years. This is perhaps one of the biggest differences between those who lose weight temporarily and those who manage to keep it off. There is no magic solution. There is consistency. Science has repeatedly shown that lasting results are usually associated with sustainable changes, not extreme measures. This also helps explain why very strict diets can produce rapid weight loss, but are often followed by partial or total regain of the lost weight when they become impossible to maintain. In other words, the problem isn't always the diet. Often, it's expecting a plan designed for a few weeks to be followed for the rest of your life. And here, we arrive at perhaps the most important discovery of this entire investigation. The body is not an enemy. It's simply doing what it was programmed to do throughout evolution. When we understand this, we stop fighting against the body and start working alongside it. This change in perspective may seem subtle, but it completely transforms how we approach weight loss. Because in the end, winning this battle doesn't mean defeating the metabolism. It means understanding its rules and building habits that can function even when it tries to conserve energy. And that's precisely what we'll see at the end of this investigation. how to transform this knowledge into practical, sustainable actions based on the best available evidence. After going through all this investigation, one conclusion becomes inevitable. For a long time, millions of people believed that the difficulty in losing weight was merely a reflection of a lack of discipline. Each failed attempt seemed to confirm this idea. The scale stopped going down, hunger increased, fatigue set in, and the blame always fell on the person trying to change. But science has revealed a much more complex story. The human body wasn't designed to facilitate weight loss. It was shaped to prevent it from happening when it interprets that energy reserves are dwindling too much. This completely changes how we view the process. It doesn't mean that losing weight is impossible, nor does it mean that any difficulty can be attributed exclusively to metabolism. What research shows is that there is a constant interaction between biology, behavior, and environment. The result depends on all these factors working together. This understanding leads to an important question. If the body reacts by trying to regain the lost weight, is there any way to reduce this resistance? The answer is yes. There is no method capable of completely switching off these survival mechanisms. But there are strategies that help the body go through this process more favorably. The first of these is perhaps the most important of all. Avoid rushing. Extremely rapid weight loss usually represents a greater challenge for the body. In many cases, they also increase muscle mass loss and make it more difficult to maintain results in the long term. This doesn't mean that rapid weight loss is always inappropriate. In some clinical situations, under professional supervision, it may be indicated. But for most people, gradual changes tend to be more sustainable. Another essential point is preserving muscle mass. Each strength training session sends an important message to the body. These muscles are still needed. This information helps reduce muscle tissue loss during a calorie deficit and promotes the maintenance of functional capacity, strength, and energy expenditure. Nutrition also needs to stop being seen solely as a calorie count. Protein distributed throughout the day promotes satiety and muscle preservation. Foods rich in fiber help control appetite. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and minimally processed foods usually offer greater volume, nutrients, and satiety with lower energy density. At the same time, it's not necessary to turn nutrition into an endless sequence of prohibitions. When a diet plan completely eliminates all foods a person enjoys, the chance of abandoning it usually increases. Sustainability is just as important as strategy. Another frequently overlooked factor is daily movement. Not all physical activity happens inside the gym. Getting up more often during work, walking short distances, using stairs when possible, playing with children, walking the dog, or doing household chores also contribute to total energy expenditure. These small movements, repeated daily, can make a significant difference over time. Sleep deserves the same attention. Sleeping well isn't just about resting. During the night, various hormonal processes related to appetite, metabolism, and muscle recovery occur in an integrated way. When sleep is consistently insufficient, controlling diet becomes much more difficult. Stress cannot be ignored either. No organism functions the same way under constant tension. Learning stress management strategies, such as physical activity, leisure time, relaxation techniques, or psychological support when necessary, is part of a complete health plan. Perhaps the most important change, however, is psychological. Instead of interpreting every fluctuation on the scale as a failure, it's more helpful to understand that body weight varies naturally. Fluid retention, hormonal changes, intestinal contents, and various other factors can modify the number displayed on the scale without representing fat gain or loss. Therefore, looking at only a single day rarely tells the whole story. The trend over the weeks is usually much more informative. This knowledge also helps us abandon a common trap: the idea that there is a perfect diet. Over the last few decades, countless methods have promised to be the ultimate solution. Low-carbohydrate diets, low-fat diets, intermittent fasting, different eating patterns, and countless variations. Science shows that different strategies can work as long as they are nutritionally adequate, create a calorie deficit when the goal is weight loss, and, most importantly, can be maintained over time. There is no single path that works for everyone. There is the one that can be incorporated into real life. And perhaps that is precisely the greatest lesson of this investigation. The experiment that followed people after extreme weight loss did not demonstrate that weight loss is useless. It also didn't prove that we are doomed to regain all the lost weight. What it revealed was something much more valuable. It showed that the body actively participates in this process. Ignoring this reality leads to frustration. Understanding it allows for the creation of smarter strategies. When we know that hunger can increase, we can plan more satiating meals. When we understand that metabolism can slow down, we realize the importance of preserving muscle mass and maintaining an active lifestyle. When we accept that small fluctuations are part of the process, we reduce the anxiety that so often leads to giving up. In other words, knowledge doesn't eliminate challenges, but it makes it possible to face them with much more clarity. At the end of this journey, we return to the question that started the documentary. Is it that some people never manage to lose weight because they lack discipline? After everything we've seen, the answer is quite different from the one that dominated the popular imagination for so many years. Discipline remains important. Healthy habits remain fundamental. But they don't act alone. There is an entire organism trying to preserve what it considers essential for survival. Recognizing this doesn't mean looking for excuses. It means replacing guilt with understanding. And when understanding meets evidence-based strategies, the path ceases to be a permanent battle and becomes a process of adaptation. Perhaps this is the greatest discovery of all. The body isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you, using rules written in a time when starving was far more dangerous than carrying excess fat. Today, science offers us the opportunity to understand these rules and work with them, instead of fighting against them. If this documentary changed the way you see weight loss, tell us in the comments what discovery caught your attention the most. Your experience can help other people facing the same challenges. If you enjoy content based on science, history, and investigation, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow the next documentaries. And in the next video, we'll explore another question that challenges decades of beliefs about food and metabolism. Can a food considered healthy, depending on the context, be sabotaging your energy without you realizing it? Until then, remember, small changes repeated consistently often produce much greater results than quick fixes that disappear over time. Science shows that health isn't built in a single day, but through the choices we make, one after another. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next documentary.